The year is 2035. It's been a long time coming, but finally humanity has set foot on Mars. It's the greatest adventure in human history, and the bravest astronaut to ever live has just landed on the red planet. But how did they do it? What challenges have they faced? And what will life be like on the red planet? We can't know for sure exactly what's going to happen when the first human lands on Mars, but we can make some pretty good guesses. We already know, for example, that there are plenty of obstacles between us and our goal. We also know that if we don't prepare carefully, those obstacles could prove fatal. But with careful planning, everything should go according to plan, and we may get to see the most inspiring story of all time play out before our eyes. The first thing we need to sort out is, of course, the journey to Mars itself. Let's start by talking about the launch. Obviously, this would be a big deal, and would probably be televised for the whole world to see. There would be lots of technical issues to overcome, especially if this is to be the first manned mission to Mars. But assuming everything goes well, the ship successfully leaves the atmosphere and enters orbit around the planet. After this, the crew will need to dock with the vehicle that will take them down to the surface. They won't be able to land on Mars in the same way that they would on the Moon. Due to the atmosphere, the crew would instead descend in a specialized vehicle not unlike a spaceplane. This would allow them to travel much faster through the atmosphere without burning up. And once they were close enough to the surface, parachutes would deploy to bring them down safely. Upon landing, the crew would need to suit up in advanced space suits, which would protect them from the thin Martian atmosphere and any potential contaminants on the surface. Their base would be waiting for them nearby, fully stocked and ready to go. After all, there would be no opportunity for resupply missions at this point, so they would need to make sure they brought everything they needed along with them. It's worth noting that the reason we say the base would be waiting for them is that it wouldn't be there first. If everything goes according to plan, the first humans to walk on Mars won't be the first people there. In fact, there would likely be several uncrewed missions before then to make sure everything was ready. Robots would have surveyed the best locations to build a base, and the best resources for sustaining life. They would have also built the base itself, tested various pieces of equipment, and made sure that there were no unpleasant surprises waiting for the human explorers. All of this brings us to the big question though. How long would the first crewed mission to Mars actually last? Well, that depends on your definition of mission. After all, the journey to Mars would take many months, and the crew would have to spend at least some time setting up camp before they could even think about exploring. So if we define the mission as starting at the departure from Earth and ending when the crew returns home, then the mission would last over 2 years. That's how long it takes for the planets to align perfectly and allow for a safe journey. Of course, these days that wouldn't necessarily stop people from launching rockets. But if the first mission to Mars is anything like other crewed missions to faraway places, then it will be a very one-way trip. This means that the real length of the mission would be defined as the amount of time the crew spend on the surface of Mars, and that would depend on their goals. If the mission is successful, then they would explore the area around their base and search for signs of ancient life. They might also begin the process of extracting resources from Mars itself and begin building new structures to expand their base. All of this means that the mission could last anywhere from a few months to several years. Of course, the longer they stay, the more supplies they'll need to bring with them. So there's a limit to how long they could possibly stay. There are also risks involved in staying too long. Prolonged exposure to low-gravity environments has been shown to cause muscle loss and bone loss in astronauts. So if they want to return to Earth and live normal lives, they'll need to keep their stay relatively short. Also, while Mars is a frozen desert today, scientists believe that it was once much warmer and that there may still be liquid water beneath the surface. If the crew accidentally contaminate the planet by bringing back samples from the surface, it could compromise any future attempts to find alien life there. That's why it's likely they would never even leave the vicinity of their base. But what happens when the time comes for them to go home? To answer that question, we'll need to take another look at the journey to Mars. As we said before, the crew would need to bring a ship with them that would be capable of leaving Mars orbit and returning to Earth. This would mean either designing a brand new vehicle specifically for this purpose or modifying one of the existing spacecraft to fit the bill. Either way, the technology required to make this journey is currently beyond our capabilities. But assuming we can pull it off, the departure from Mars would likely be just as exciting as the arrival. Once the crew had finished their work and gathered all of their equipment, they would board their ship and prepare for departure. Once again, this would be a highly publicized event and would probably be streamed online for anyone to watch. The crew would then fire up the engines and slowly leave orbit around Mars. As they climbed higher and higher away from the planet, they would do a final flyby of their base to say goodbye. Then they would turn the ship around and head towards Earth. This part of the journey would be the easiest, as all they'd have to do is fire up their engines and sit back. In theory, it should only take a few months to get home. But of course, things don't always go according to plan. There's a chance that the ship could break down during the journey, leaving the crew stranded in deep space. There's also the possibility that something could go wrong with the landing procedure, and the ship could crash into the atmosphere. But assuming everything goes well, the crew will eventually see the familiar blue marble that is our home planet. As they approach, the ship would automatically begin slowing down until finally it was within the atmosphere. At this point, the crew would need to put on their space suits and monitor the instruments closely. As they descended, the atmosphere would begin to slow them down further until finally the ship touched down safely. If this is the first manned mission to Mars, then this landing would be one of the most anticipated events in human history. From here, the crew would begin the long process of reintegrating into society. Since they would have been gone for so long, there would be many logistical hurdles to overcome before they could rejoin the rest of humanity. But that's a problem for future Mark. For now, let's just say congratulations to the first humans to ever set foot on Mars. You might be wondering how they might go about that. Well, in reality, it would probably be a simple matter of stepping out of their ship onto the surface. Of course, the crew would need to be careful not to contaminate the planet, so they would probably set up a special area near their ship where they could safely explore. Once they were suited up, the crew would use a combination of robots and their own sensors to explore their surroundings. They would probably bring along a variety of tools and equipment to help them understand their environment better. They might also try to collect samples of rock and soil to bring back to Earth for further study. All of this would be done with the understanding that they are the first humans to ever set foot on Mars. The weight of history would be heavy on their shoulders as they explore this new world. But that's what makes this mission so special. These brave astronauts would be pioneers, charting a new course for humanity among the stars. They would also be ambassadors for the entire human race, tasked with the responsibility of showing the universe what humans are capable of. If they could succeed in exploring Mars, then the door would be open for future missions to other worlds. They would be blazing a trail for future generations to follow. That's why the first humans to walk on Mars will go down in history as the bravest astronauts who ever lived. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about space exploration, then check out one of our other videos on the channel. With that, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.